After 30 years of marriage, I buried my sister on a Thursday and discovered my husband had replaced me by Thursday night. I came home exhausted from the funeral and found a 26-year-old woman sitting barefoot in my kitchen while my husband looked annoyed I hadn't called first. Not guilty, not nervous, annoyed. Then he told me he'd been planning a peaceful separation for months. While I was grieving my sister, he was secretly moving another woman into our life one drawer at a time. I remember standing there in wet funeral clothes, realizing the man I trusted most had already erased me before the marriage even ended. That should have been the moment my life collapsed. Instead, it became the moment everything finally changed. Because 6 months later, the same husband who discarded me walked into a crowded art gallery, saw strangers fighting to buy something I created with my own hands, and suddenly understood the woman he abandoned was never broken. She was just buried alive beside the wrong man. If you've ever had someone make you feel invisible after giving them the best years of your life, stay with me, because what happened next taught me something I wish I'd understood much earlier. Some people don't break you because you're weak. They break you because they mistake your loyalty for permanence. And sometimes losing the life you planned is the only thing that forces you to finally see your own value. The morning of my sister's funeral started with my husband making coffee and kissing my forehead like everything in our marriage was normal. Looking back now, that's the part that still unsettles me the most. Not the affair, not the divorce, the performance. 30 years with someone teaches you how to trust the small things, the way they say your name, the way they hand you your keys, the way they ask if you'll be okay driving home alone after a funeral. That morning, Daniel stood in our kitchen wearing the same calm expression he'd worn for decades and told me not to worry about anything at home. At the time, I thought he meant dinner or laundry or one of the thousands of ordinary things couples say to each other without thinking. I had no idea another woman had already been sleeping in our guest room for almost a week. My younger sister, Amy, had spent 8 months fighting ovarian cancer. By the end, she weighed less than 100 pounds and still apologized every time someone helped her sit up in bed. That was the kind of person she was, gentle even while dying. Her funeral drained whatever energy grief hadn't already taken from me. I remember barely hearing conversations at the reception afterward. People hugged me. Someone handed me casserole dishes wrapped in foil. My cousins talked about staying strong. But all I could think about was going home, taking off my heels, and sitting in silence for a few hours. It started raining during the drive back. Cold February rain that blurred the highway lights and made everything outside the windshield look distorted. By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was nearly 10 at night. At first, nothing looked strange except an unfamiliar silver suitcase sitting near the front porch. I honestly assumed one of Daniel's relatives had stopped by unexpectedly. Then I walked inside. A woman I had never seen before was sitting at my kitchen island wearing one of Daniel's college sweatshirts, scrolling through her phone like she belonged there. She couldn't have been older than 26. She looked up first. Then Daniel stepped out of the hallway behind her, froze for half a second, and sighed like I'd interrupted something inconvenient. "Linda," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I still remember how cold my hands felt hearing those 4 words. Because deep down, before he explained anything, before either of them spoke again. Some part of me already knew my marriage had ended long before that moment. Daniel kept staring at me the way people look at a storm they were hoping would pass quietly. The girl stood up slowly from the kitchen stool, suddenly uncomfortable now that I was actually there in front of her instead of just some older wife she'd heard complaints about. I looked from her to the half-empty wineglass beside the sink to the overnight bag sitting near the stairs and felt something strange happen inside me. Not anger at first, not even heartbreak, just disbelief so deep my brain almost refused to process what I was seeing. "Who is this?" I asked, even though I already knew. Daniel rubbed his jaw and avoided eye contact. That tiny movement told me everything before he even opened his mouth. "Her name is Jenna," he said carefully. Carefully. Like he was speaking to someone unstable. "We've been seeing each other for a while." A while. 30 years together reduced to 2 words spoken in my own kitchen while funeral flowers still sat in the backseat of my car. Jenna crossed her arms awkwardly and muttered, "I didn't know you were coming home tonight." I actually laughed when she said that, not because anything was funny, but because it was so absurd my body didn't know how else to react. My husband had apparently built an entirely new life inside our marriage, while I was helping my sister schedule chemotherapy appointments. I asked Daniel how long this had been happening. He hesitated just long enough for me to realize the truth would hurt worse than the lie. "About 8 months," he admitted quietly. 8 months. The exact amount of time my sister had been dying. I felt the air leave my lungs so fast I had to grab the edge of the counter to steady myself. Suddenly, every late meeting, every guy's weekend, every distracted dinner made horrifying sense. The signs had been there. I just never imagined betrayal could walk around wearing the face of someone who still kissed you goodbye every morning. Then Daniel said something I will probably hear in my head for the rest of my life. "Linda, you haven't really been happy for years." Happy. As if unhappiness justified humiliation. As if quietly surviving adulthood together wasn't what most marriages eventually became. I stared at the man I had spent my entire adult life loving and realized he'd rewritten our history long before he ever confessed the affair. In his version, I wasn't loyal. I was lifeless. I wasn't grieving. I was inconvenient. And standing there watching him defend the woman sitting in my kitchen, I understood something terrifying. The marriage I thought I was fighting for no longer existed except inside my own memory. I don't remember packing a bag. To this day, that entire hour feels blurred around the edges like a bad dream my brain still refuses to replay clearly. I remember opening drawers without knowing what I was looking for. I remember folding sweaters with shaking hands while Daniel stood in the hallway pretending silence was somehow kinder than honesty. And I remember noticing stupid little details that shouldn't matter but somehow still do. Jenna's pink phone charger plugged into my kitchen outlet. Her shampoo bottle sitting in my shower. A pair of white sneakers beside the back door where my gardening shoes used to be. That was the moment reality finally hit me. This wasn't an affair anymore. It was a replacement. Daniel followed me into the bedroom while I zipped up an old suitcase from the closet. "You don't have to leave tonight," he said carefully. I turned around so fast he actually stepped backward. "Then she does," I replied. He looked down at the floor and said nothing. And somehow that silence hurt worse than the cheating itself. Because after 30 years together, when forced to choose between protecting his wife or protecting his new relationship, he had already made his decision long ago. I drove 20 minutes before pulling into the parking lot of a cheap extended-stay motel near the interstate. The kind with flickering neon signs and cigarette burns on the sidewalks. My hands shook so badly checking in that the woman at the front desk asked if I needed medical help. I lied and told her I was just tired from a funeral, which was technically true. That first night alone felt physically unbearable. People talk about heartbreak like it's emotional, but nobody explains how deeply your body feels it. My chest hurt. My stomach cramped. Even breathing felt uneven. Around 3 in the morning, I sat on the edge of that motel bed staring at the floral wallpaper and realized I genuinely had no idea who I was without my marriage. For 30 years, every decision I made included another person. What to cook, where to travel, which bills to pay first, what color to paint the walls. Suddenly, I was 58 years old eating crackers from a vending machine beside a buzzing ice machine, while another woman slept in my house beside my husband. 2 days later, Daniel emailed me divorce paperwork. Emailed. 30 years together ended through a PDF attachment sent at 9:14 in the morning. I opened it sitting inside a laundromat because I still couldn't afford to think too far ahead financially. And buried halfway through the documents was the sentence that finally broke whatever denial I still had left. He wanted to sell the house. The house where we raised our daughter. The house we renovated room by room every summer. The house I thought I would grow old in. I walked outside before I started crying because I couldn't stand the thought of strangers watching me fall apart beside industrial dryers. Rain had started again, cold and steady against the pavement. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, and for the first time in my entire life, I honestly understood how people disappear emotionally. How they stop answering calls, stop opening curtains, stop believing tomorrow will feel any different. Then something unexpected happened. Across the street from the laundromat, I noticed a small warehouse with huge glowing windows fogged from heat. A handmade sign outside read, "Glass Studio Open House Tonight." And for reasons I still can't fully explain, I got out of the car and walked inside.